give you just like 20 minutes about an idea I was busy with, how much we trust in science. Because I know that you are always facing many ideas and people are speaking about science like the only reference and the major, God of this world. And actually science always changes. So let's study the idea, confidence in science. Because I guess the COVID-19 made it like a big problem between scientific issues and religious issues. Some religious people started to say that it's the message of God, it's kind of punishment from God, and science was speaking about it's like any virus and it's natural disaster, and so people of science do not want to see any part related to God. And sometimes people of God, they do not estimate or they do not respect science enough. The first question, can anyone be a religious scientist? Because nowadays people may say that all scientists are atheists. So definitely science is against faith, which is not true. Because the history can tell you that most of the very famous and respected scientists were very Christian, were very religious, like Galileo, Kepler, Pascal, Boyle, Newton, Faraday. These people were very much religious. They were real Christians. And they are very much respected when we speak about science till this moment. So they cannot say that, science goes with atheism and you cannot believe in God and be a scientist. That's not real. That's not true. Actually, you may be a very religious person and you can be a scientist. And also, C.S. Lewis, he was such a British philosopher, and he was an atheist and he became very conservative Christian. And he spoke much about atheism and, the dialogue between science and logic and faith. So he said it this way: scientists start with the solid belief that there must be a law that governs nature. So when any science starts to study any subject, they usually start with this idea in their mind that there should be some law that governs the nature. Therefore, there must be an author for this law. So simply as if they are saying there should be some kind of an author for such law. Another question important, are the sayings or the teachings of scientists always rational, always scientific? Actually, the answer is no. Many of the dialogues, many of the statements given by scientists were proved to be not rational. So, like Carl Sagan, one of the cosmologists, he said this sentence: the cosmos is all that is or was or ever will be. Actually, this sentence could never be rational, could never be scientific. It's like his imagination, it's an idea. But he cannot prove what he says, and that's not a scientific talk. This is an expression of an atheist ideology and not a scientific fact. So some of the scientists, they speak words and sentences which is not rational, which is not accepted even scientifically. So we shouldn't, look up to scientists as if they never fail, they never do mistakes. Actually, definitely, they do many mistakes, and they sometimes, fight against each other. People take all what scientists say as facts. That's the problem. Most of the people, when you ask anyone around, do you believe in God? He will tell you, no, there is no God. So how could we humans became like so much intelligent and complicated this way? they will tell you simply science said that evolution made up these humans to appear. Actually, science never said so, and you cannot prove it by all scientific measures. So they used to say things which is usually nonsense or not rational. Another famous Stephen William Hawking, his mathematician, says in his book Philosophy of Science, philosophy is dead, despite the fact that the name of the book is Philosophy of Science. He said it this way. The name of his book, Philosophy of Science. Inside the book, he said, philosophy is dead. So sometimes they are not rational. Another important question, is science the only way to truth? No. Simply, if you say that the only way to the truth is just science, as if you are saying, let's close all departments of history, of literature, of languages, of music, as if all these things, which are not considered science, by the way, but you study these things and people, are into these subjects. So you cannot say the truth is only in science. My science is not necessarily logical. Reasoning or causation covers all aspects of life much more than abstract science. I mean that sometimes when you listen to scientists or you study what they say, they are not rational and they are not logic and they do not give real strong reasons. Another important issue when we speak about faith and science, because sometimes we Christians considered ignorant, considered non-scientific simply because we believe. When we say we believe, as if we are not into the language of science. But actually, I was a doctor. I had a master's degree in dermatology, and I used to read many books in science and everything. But so I have my reasoning, I have my logic. But I believe in God, and I found this belief is very rational because it goes with my sense, with my logic that there should be an author of life, there should be a creator and a designer for such a very beautiful world and a very beautiful man. So it can never come out of nothing or with no design. Simply, when we speak about any delicious meal, we may understand its component, its details, but it does not mean answering the simple question why this food was made. So the question of why had nothing to do with science. The question of why is always related to belief. Science may speak about this world and details of this great world, but can science answer the question why this world it exists? They cannot. So always faith is busy with the question of why. Science may be busy with the question of how, so they can work together. They are not anti each other, against each other. A good scientist, Sir Peter Medwar, the Nobel Prize winner, said science has its limits because it's unable to answer the question of children and simple people. So science cannot answer very simple question like what's afterlife. Science can do nothing with this question. Why I came to this life? Definitely, science can never deal with these simple questions asked by children or simple people. Religion always depends on faith, but science does not depend on faith. But when you study atheism, When you study atheism as if it's kind of a religion, it's like group of beliefs, but had no scientific background. Because in atheism, no one can prove the non-existence of God. When you think it in a scientific way, if they say that atheism is definitely scientific, okay, by science, just prove the non-existence of God. They cannot. So they do not speak real scientific terms. Einstein himself said, "I cannot conceive a genuine man of science without a profound faith." Until this moment, Einstein is very respected by scientific people. And he said also, "Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind." So we are dealing with many things on scientific basis. I'm using this laptop, which is the product of science. But I'm telling you words very reasonable, I guess, and it goes with my faith. So we can work together to believe in God and to be very much reasonable, very much down to earth, very logic, very sensible. All the scientific studies, usually all them, begin with full confidence in the intelligence that lies beyond the universe. When you start, examining anything in this world, you are thinking of this world as very much intelligent. And the design is super intelligent. So we start with this as if we are saying there is a designer, so much intelligent beyond the scene. And when they say science depends on reason, Christianity does not, they are not logic actually. Christianity is very reasonable. There is a very nice book written like 10 years ago in USA by a famous apologist. He said, the title of the book, "I do not have enough faith to be an atheist." So as if to be an atheist, you need to just ignore the logic and reasoning and go with some beliefs. So it's much easier to believe in the existence of God. It's much reasonable, much logic to believe in the existence of God than the non-existence of God. Also, by the way, the Bible is full of proofs. The Bible speaks to our minds, not only to our hearts. It was written in the Gospel of St. John, in the last chapter or the chapter before the last. "Truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written that you may believe." So the signs, the miracles done by the Lord, seen by many, many people, proved that Jesus was there, and he is not only a man, he is a real God. So the Bible speaks about proofs, about signs. So the Bible may use the same language of science. Actually, all people use their minds, not just scientists. So why should you follow scientists as if you do not have any mind to think of? And scientists simply die, and they do not have any solution for death. But we believers, we can see the answer of the big question of death. Science can never resolve the idea of death. No one can conquer death, but Christ could. And he gave the authority, he gave us the authority over death. Anthony Flew, one of the philosophers, said, he was an atheist and became Christian. "I lived my life following the saying of Socrates, follow the evidence, and so I returned to faith." When he followed the evidence, he reached faith. So don't say that it's just to ignore the mind in order to believe. Is religion the opium of the people, as Marx said it, Actually not, but science sometimes is the opium of many people. When the communism, if you study history, came against religion, there was the highest rate of murder. When they ignored the existence of God, they killed more than 60 million of their people in like 60 years because they said there is no God. So when they accused religions as being against humanity, when you study history, you will find out the opposite.